What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So One Night in Karazhan has been released already, and pretty much as each wing trickles into the standard meta, well, it's gonna change immensely. But you know, which cards from the expansion are gonna be the best in Constructed? So we're here to answer that question, and we're showing off our 8 most overpowered cards in this expansion. So let's jump right into it. With number 8, we've got Maelstrom Portal. So our first card on the list, Area of Effect is always pretty powerful, but historically, cards like Arcane Explosion that do only 1 damage haven't entirely been powerful in the past. But the thing is that getting the 1-drop and putting this card in the Shaman class as well really does make Arcane Explosion all that much better. Shaman's a class that plays a lot harder for the board than Mage does, and getting board advantage super early is much more powerful in Shaman. And Maelstrom Portal helps you clear out your opponent's minions and build a board presence of your own, and it's honestly just kind of busted with anything that gives you spell power, and not to mention your hero power has a chance to give you spell power too, and spell power cards are something that Shaman have played quite a lot in the past. You've got Blood Mage Thalnos, Azure Drake, etc. And this card's a great option for mid-range Shaman decks, supplementing other Area of Effect abilities like Lightning Storm. And the more strong Area of Effects that Shaman get, the more viability it has as a mid-range / control class rather than just a heavily board-focused one. And it's pretty nice to see Shaman get powerful effects like these. This card might not seem as powerful as some of the others on the surface, but we suspect it's one of the stronger cards in the set and is definitely something that people will underrate in this expansion. Our next broken card is Ironforged Portal. So this is more of a hidden overpowered card, kind of like Shield Maiden was when it was initially released. So for 5 mana, Ironforged Portal gives you 4 armor and summons a random 4-cost minion. Now this is on paper a pretty good effect, and there are actually a lot of great 4-drop minions that you can get from it, not to mention certain 7/7s. But, is this card actually broken? And we definitely think it is, but not because of the effect, but rather the type of play that it enables for the warrior class. So yeah, warriors kind of already one of the best classes in the game right now, but all of the good warrior decks are just hyper efficient tempo decks. Control Warrior, on the other hand, which has historically been one of the best classes in the game, best decks in the game, hasn't been played that much recently, but Ironforged Portal is probably going to change that. It costs 4 mana, so it replaces the 4-drop slot that Death's Bite left so empty in the deck, and it gives you armor while also putting a minion on the board, so it does pretty much exactly what Shield Maiden did. This card was very clearly designed to put Control Warrior back into standard, and Blizzard might have just done a little bit too good of a job with it because the card is actually quite solid. We're definitely looking forward to casting lots of these and bringing Control Warrior back to the top of the meta. Moving on at number 6, we've got Cloaked Huntress. So it's a little bit unclear whether this card will actually be dominant or not, but anything that gives you free mana is something that definitely deserves a second look. You got cards like Emperor Thaurissan, Innervate, and Wild Growth. Those cards have just dominated the standard meta, and although Huntress kind of accelerates your mana in a different way, it's definitely worth building a deck around overall. We've got a lot of secret synergies in this set, and it's not difficult to imagine just a turn 5 Huntress plus a lock and load, and you just dump your handful of secrets for free, you draw a new hand, and you get a nice little crown of secrets right there. So effects like Huntress tend to be super abusable, honestly, because of the tempo swing, and although this card is definitely playable and great in mid-range decks that play secrets, it might also be what finally lets various Hunter combo decks really shine. Many people are comparing it to Kirin Tormage and saying that it might not see that much play, but not only does Huntress have better stats because a 3/4 is way better than a 4/3 creature, it also has a static effect, so if they don't kill it immediately, you can play more secrets for free on the next turn, and not only that, but Huntress is abusable and lets you play infinite secrets instead of just 1, so you can just unload with a lock and load card or just pull off so many crazy combos with spells. And so while we might not see that much of this card initially, we definitely expect it to be abused in one deck or another down the line. Our next broken card is Nightbane Templar. So Templar is a 3 mana 2/3 creature that summons 2 1/1 whelps if you're holding a dragon while you cast it. So that makes this card overall a 3 mana creature for a 4/5 power worth of stats, comparable to a Chillwind Yeti. It can also be situationally better since you can actually split up the attacks and stabilize better against aggro, or have situational buff cards like Direwolf Alpha work a little bit better as well, which is usually what you would have wanted this card to do anyway, honestly. So this card gives you a great reason to play Dragon Paladin now, and it does a really good job of just covering the deck's main weakness, which is essentially just, you know, a lack of a powerful early game. So this card's going to be much better than the other 3-drop that Dragon decks have access to, and it's going to do a great job of fighting against all of the hyper efficient decks in the meta as well. Templar seems particularly effective against Zoo and Shaman decks probably, but it's honestly just going to be great regardless of what you play against, and we definitely expect to see quite a lot of it in the new standard meta. At number 4, we have our next broken card and first legendary on the list with the Curator. It's not that difficult to play a one of each type of a Dragon Beast and a Murloc in a control deck, and if you do that, then the Curator becomes a 7-mana 4/6 taunt that also draws 3 cards. It's like a Druid of the Claw plus a Nourish, but for 3 less mana overall, and that's actually just insane. Even if this card is only used to just draw like an Alexstrasza or a Deathwing, it's still just incredible. And it seems like a card that every control deck is going to want to play because of how many dragons there are that you want to just search out from your deck. Drawing cards on a taunt creature isn't something that we've seen before necessarily, but it's honestly just incredibly powerful, since usually drawing cards is something that you sacrifice tempo for, and it ends up costing you on the board, but the Curator just makes up for that completely by having taunt. So other than maybe not being able to heal, the Curator compares very favorably to pre-nerf Ancient of Lore, and that was a card that was just completely busted. So we expect to see this card turn up in pretty much every deck that wants to go into the late game, and we're excited to see which Dragon, Beast, Murlocs people slot into their decks as the meta changes, and it honestly enables quite a lot of combos too. I mean, we finally have a card that can draw Malygos out of your deck by itself, which is actually quite interesting to see. Up next at number 3, we have Arcane Giant. So historically, most Hearthstone Giants have been very playable, except maybe Clockwork Giant, I guess, and Arcane Giant is gonna be no exception. It's not a giant that you can power out super fast like Sea Giant or maybe Mountain Giant, but rather it's one that you can play for free, or potentially just close to free in the late game, like Molten Giant almost. This card is honestly super strong, and it's made even stronger by the fact that a lot of the decks just currently reward a lot of spell synergies in other ways. You've got cards like Yogg-Saron, and honestly, who doesn't like free 8/8 creatures? I mean, it's also cool that the coin actually makes Arcane Giant come out 2 turns faster in a sense, since it's a spell and it gives you the extra mana. The fact that this card is potentially a 0 mana 8/8 honestly just guarantees that it's going to have a high spot on this list, and it's going to see a lot of play for pretty much as long as it's in standard. Our next card on the list at number 2 is going to be Barnes. So 4 mana for a 3/4 is not necessarily the best of stat lines on paper, but Barnes' effect is honestly just so insane that it honestly kind of just doesn't matter. I mean, when you play Barnes, he will always pull a 1/1 copy of a random minion from your deck to the battlefield, so you don't even get 3/4 of stats, you really get 4/5 of stats. And this is probably potentially even one of the best abilities on any Hearthstone creature made so far. I mean, imagine if the only minions in your deck are Barnes and Malygos. I mean, it's like you're playing the Ancestors Call Shaman deck, except you don't even have to have Malygos in your hand. You really just need Barnes and a bunch of burn spells and maybe stall for a few turns. And that's not even the only good thing about it. So not only does it just enable crazy combos, you can also just get straight up value with things like Ragnaros, maybe Emperor Thaurissan, or just any Death Rattle minion. Barnes' effect is honestly incredibly powerful, and he still gives you 4/5 worth of stats for 4 mana, and if you're only playing a few minions in your deck like Thaurissan, Ragnaros, Malygos maybe, it quickly just becomes some crazy combo enabler and probably the best 4-drop in the entire game. I mean, this card honestly has red flags all over it, and we would be super surprised if it just doesn't end up becoming just completely broken. I mean, I do want to give some props to Blizzard for exploring some design space with this card, but it seems like they probably went just a little bit too far, because Barnes is honestly kind of insane, and it's only getting better if more minions that are good to get with it get released in the future. And our final broken card on the list is Menagerie Warden. So when you play Menagerie Warden, you get to make a copy of a friendly beast. And as many pros have already pointed out, especially Firebat, this card is just straight up broken with Stranglethorn Tiger, since it just copies the beast entirely, so your copy is going to also have stealth. And since the first Stranglethorn Tiger had stealth, your opponent's never really going to be able to kill it, so you just get to make the copy guaranteed. You know, it's not just Stranglethorn Tiger though. I mean, Druid has access to just tons of really awesome beasts that are great to copy, and this card can often give you over 10 worth of stats for just 6 mana, sometimes even more. Sometimes you get some cool effects and just all sorts of crazy stuff. You know, this might be, honestly it probably is, the card that Beast Druid needed to push it into viability, and you don't even need to play a ton of beasts to make this card very good at all though. I mean, the value on it is just insane, and it's only going to become more so as more Druid beasts get released. I mean, just imagine if King Crush was a Druid card, like you could go for some crazy stuff. You know, Warden is an insane card in Constructed and in Arena, and finally incentivized Druid to finally play beasts in a way that's going to be competitive. Playing 6 mana for 2 very reasonably sized creatures is of course just crazy, and it's very comparable to cards like Emperor Veclor, and it's pretty easily the most broken card in the entire expansion. So those are some of our thoughts on the new cards we've seen so far. Definitely let us know what you think are the most broken cards in the comments, and looks like that's gonna be it for me. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.